Hello, everybody. This is a book club podcast thingy that I am starting. Welcome to the chaos and madness that is my new project. This is 3 Point Analysis. We are starting with Brandon Sanderson Stormlight Archive books. My lovely co host over here is April. I am Trinity, and we'll give you a little bit of information about us as quickly as possible, and then we're going to dive into this bad boy. I'll start off by saying I am an avid fantasy reader. I've read Brandon a couple of times now, mainly his YA, and I finally decided it was time after I think this is my fifth attempt trying these books to read them. And I'm so desperately in love. Little spoiler, I love it so far. So how are you feeling about it, and what's your experience so far about reading?
Well, I'm loving it. I've read the first three books already, so this is kind of like a refresher. I don't remember too much, so I'm excited to go back over everything. And I'm also excited that you're finally reading it. I've been pressuring you, maybe a bit, to try it. But yeah, so we're gonna go back over it and really get in depth of what makes the story special. So,
I
sorry,
do
that was Beam.
I do find it very funny that I got into Brandon Sanderson so much that I suggested all these books to you, and you read all of them, and I just didn't read them. So it's nice to come
Yeah,
back.
I really like absorbed every recommendation that you gave me, and this is great. So what do you think? You're like, I haven't gotten there yet. So hey, we're here now, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I really feel like I don't know. I don't know how I had this opinion prior. I was saying that I thought the beginning of the book was boring. I don't know if maybe I was holding different things important when I was reading prior. But I just finished The Wheel of Time, and this compared to that is action packed.
It really is. Love how it starts off basically discombobulating you. You have no idea what's going on, but it's already action, which is really cool. I still haven't been able to figure out what the name of the I think I'm skipping. So we have the first chapter, it's the prologue, right? So that's the people who are talking about how they are
The
what?
first
Sorry,
chapter
you go.
is the prelude. We have a
Okay.
pre-prologue chapter. Yeah. That's the one where there's, and I'm gonna do my best to be accurate because my information is limited. There are some knights fighting some, I think they're called Thunder class, big rock type peeps. And they like give up their swords. Well, everybody but one guy gives up their swords. That's the prelude.
Yeah. And it seems to they mention that so even if they win the battle, they have to go back. And they've decided as a group that they're not going to go back. But they left that one guy,
Well,
one gentleman.
they didn't say that if they won the battle, they would go back.
They said
If
they
they,
completed the task.
I don't remember that.
Oh, okay. That's how I interpret it. That they were like, so like they like, okay, we've done this, we've completed this, and we didn't. What I took as interpreted is that they didn't get killed during that thing, so they didn't go back to the place of nightmares.
Hmm.
Uh, and so when then they're all supposed to meet at that one place to whoever makes it through the ordeal. So that guy, the person in the perspective of the story, they go to the meeting place,
Hmm.
and there's only one person left, and all the other people have staked their swords, and they've made the decision to not go back
Yes.
to the place of nightmares. They're just gonna leave that one person there. I was gonna say, so I interpreted that they literally had to do like the um I don't know if this is the right term, but basically they had to like unalive themselves to go back to the place to start the whole loop over again because it was like the endless duty that they had first agreed upon, that they mentioned that they did voluntarily, but that it had continued to beat them down over the countless years or however uncountable times that they've done it. So that's why they decided to not go back and just leave that one person there, kind of like as a sacrifice. Like, we all volunteered this, so we can volunteer to stop. This is too much.
Right.
Is
Okay.
Yeah.
See, because I just got done with the Wheel of Time, which has got like this world where people are reborn. Like everyone in the universe essentially knows that souls are reborn. Like it's just the thing that happens. And so when I was reading it, I was reading it more as like not necessarily that they like won. More like they won this battle in like a long line of battles, but that ultimately like something had to happen for it to be like the final win. And so they were saying like we lost this one. It wasn't the final battle or the final win for us. We're going to have to continue to do this. We're going to have to do this again, like these battles or whatever it is that we're doing. Like I don't want to do that anymore. Let's just not. And so like we are choosing to lose essentially the whole gambit because we don't want to have to continue to fight the smaller battles. Hopefully this guy wins when he has to come back. That's kind of how I felt. Not necessarily that they were like they had won here. Like they just hadn't been killed, so it didn't all have to be restarted over, but like this was not them winning.
So your interpretation then that the person who was left in like the place of nightmares, they would be able to choose to come back and fight the battle again by themselves without the other 9.
Well, that's like I was thinking that it wasn't necessarily like a choice thing. Like they bound themselves to whatever this like I think it's like a pearl or something because one of the characters talks about it later in one of the chapters. Um like a pearl or something that they combine their oath with and it connects them to like whatever magic source is going on. And so I assume like they restart this battle at some point, right? Because like ultimately like if the bad guys win at the end, like the world is destroyed or there is nobody, so like the timeline can't continue. So maybe there's like some significant point further on in which if the bad guys reach a certain point, like everything gets reset. And so at that point the
Mm.
people are brought out of like I think they call it desolation and brought back to the beginning where they're gonna like fight again or like do more things. But since these guys have left their swords, broken their oath, when they die, they won't go to desolation. They won't be reborn. They're done. That's kind of how I
Mm.
was reading it. But I'm realizing now as I say that, like super Wheel of Timey. So it like it could be that it has that's not even close to how this magic works.
Yeah, you'd think that I would have more of an idea having read the first 3 books, but still, I'm just as clueless.
So that was chapter 1 though. So it ends up, you know, they who was the actual like chapter was the actual chapter guy's name? The Oath Boys, that's what I'm gonna call them. Because I know they have a name, but I'm calling them the Oath Boys now. Kalek. And his leader, Jezrien. I'm probably also going to mess up plenty of these names. End up abandoning their swords and abandoning the cause and leaving Homeboy all by himself to fight the battle alone. But somebody does say, you know, with that one guy, still a chance. See, the thing
All it
that
takes is a chance.
I find really interesting about the intro of this book is that it's super, like, impactful. I feel like it's a lot of magic stuff. It, like, very much doesn't give you like the context clues that you need, but the context clues are probably there if you've read all the books. But I have no idea who the bad guy is. Like it's like there's a group of people trying to save the world who are essentially being like reborn to fight these giant creatures. But I have no idea why, like when any of it's going
Right.
on.
It's it's nice that it's left in like that neutral zone because you know, maybe no one's really the bad guy. It's all perspective to a certain degree, and then how your decisions make you a bad guy because of that. So
Yeah, as I've been reading like more and more and focusing more on the characters, like I'm starting to realize that a lot of these people are none of them are like wholly good. unflawed. Like I haven't ran necessarily into any Mary Sue's yet. Like I would say Kaladin's like kind of close. There's been no one who's like, I'm great. I only do great things. I'm a genius. Things go well for me. Like, which has been nice.
Mm-hmm. It is. It feels more realistic. Yeah.
All right. So
I
now
look.
the prologue.
I'm sorry. Can I go? Can I go? Actually, can we go back? Can I go to
Yeah.
the acknowledgments? So
Oh
in
yeah.
the acknowledgments at the end, Brandon talks about. Oh my gosh, I wrote this gentleman's name down. Um, Michael Whalen
Mm-hmm.
being the artist who did the cover art for a book that he, because of the art, he picked it up, and that's what started his love for fantasy.
Oh yeah.
And then this art here was made by him, and he felt that it was a really like magical thing to
Aww.
be able to have worked with them. And I thought that that was really special too. It's like to be inspired to try something new, and
Yeah.
then be able to work with that person that sparked that inspiration. Yeah, that's really cool. So I wanted to say something about that.
Oh, that's incredible. Because I've heard him talk about it on some live streams before. I didn't read the acknowledgments past those ones. But he
Well,
has
they're
talked about
always
it.
thorough. So
Okay, I'll read the next one. Okay, so we're moving on to the prologue, which is the point of view of the prologue is gosh, I hope I'm saying this right. I listened to the audiobook and I read the book and I still cannot pronounce some of the names.
I wrote their name down as Truthless because they mentioned themselves being called Truthless. So
Truthless is perfect. Okay, all
yeah,
right. We got the Oath Boys and Truthless.
you're doing great.
I'm gonna accidentally call him Toothless a couple of times. Watch. And he is he's killing kings, isn't he? He's a king killer.
Sure is
Yeah.
contracted to do so. It seems like so.
Yeah. Which is crazy. This is like a total side note, and we may edit this out, we may not. I am writing a book. I've been writing a book for about 2.5 years now. And one of my groups of people in my book are assassins that at their top level wear all white because it is a
Mm,
like a bragging right of an assassin to be able to kill someone without getting a drop of blood on their white clothing. And as soon as I was like, he wear all white, so they saw him come, and I was like, oh my gosh, someone's gonna read my book and think I was inspired by this, but I wrote it before I read this.
that's great. That would be pretty impressive. This I think his thing was the white was directed. He was told that he had to wear the white, right?
Yeah,
To
so they could see him coming. Like this, I definitely don't feel like obviously the king needed to die, and like that's what they wanted, but they were way more focused on like make sure everybody sees that we can do this in plain sight. We can send someone in and take down your head guy with like his blade and his armor. Like nothing will save you. Which is terrifying. And like you don't even know either side of the conflict, so like reading this, like it's epic. He's making choices that he obviously like is morally wishy-washy on. He's more like, I'm supposed to be doing this, like it doesn't matter whether or not I want to be doing this. And so you're like, well, so are you a bad guy? Like, is this king, like, should this king have died? Should this king not have died? Because I don't know, like, what necessarily is going on.
Mm-hmm. And then it's also interesting too that they use like he has like an abandonment of his own life, right? He uses like is himself very recklessly. He even says at one point that he would, you know, he wouldn't like allow himself to be killed, but he wouldn't we would welcome the end if it came. But then uses that later when he's, you know, rushing to try to finish the task. He's like, I just have to I gotta go all in,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and uses that to his advantage. So you're right. It's very interesting that he seems to be so morally sound and then also just mentally unsound at the same time.
But also like the description of the magic that's used in this chapter. So I think they call it lashing.
I was reading. I said lashings.
Lashings. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it like reminded me of the scene in Inception where they like shot the scene with like the hallway spinning.
Yeah.
running around. And so I was like thinking about that because I can't necessarily visualize these things very well. And so to me, I was just like, he's doing this, and oh my goodness, he's flying now. He's going all over the place. Like, I wonder where he's gonna land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was really cool that it was like using staying in the air but not using flight, using more of the change of reality and gravity.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool too. There's a so what came to my mind. I think that's funny that Inception came to yours. There's this oh my gosh, Call of Duty Zombies. There's this I want to say it's like there's a Cthulhu map, but basically when you're going to get pack-a-punches where you like upgrade your gun, you like jump off, you're on a platform and you jump on to the wall within, and so you jump in the air and then gravity kind of changes and your feet touch the wall, and then all of a sudden you're standing in that direction, like if you're sideways, like here's the wall, here's your body, and you're sideways, and then you go all the way down, you jump off the wall, and then your feet and your body changes because the new floor is right here. So that's why you come down. So it seems like you're flying, but you're really just kind of falling with magnets on your feet.
Hmm.
I don't know. Is the way I kind of thought about it.
That's interesting. That's crazy. I was thinking like how jarring it would be to like have two people like walking up to each other, like Mr. Guard and like Homeboy, Truthless, walking up, and then him just be like, and I'm gonna take a dip back. And so like this guard is over here like, did he just decide to like lay down on the floor? And then all of a sudden, like bam, like the whole room's gravity shifts. And like not only now is this dude's like feet coming towards you, but if you're standing and like the gravity shifts, like I guess lashing, it doesn't affect the whole area. It only affects the one point he's considering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's why I liked, or like whenever he talked about lashing himself, is that it's almost like if you were to take the room that they're in and they're standing in, all of a sudden it flips because he's changed where gravity's supposed to go. So he's like, oh, I want to go over here to this wall. So it flips, and now he's gonna have to go down because gravity's now attached to this new thing. So it's like perspective changes because gravity changes.
So I do find it very interesting that Brandon tends to start his books with people that fully know the magic system and have like almost effortless use of it because of the experience that they've had. Like you can tell that this is not his first time he's using this. Like I'm so interested to see a character that's using it for the first time because as someone who can barely walk as a normal human, I cannot imagine the learning curve of trying to bend with the right lashings or fall the right direction with the right lashings and changing them before your head impacts the ground or you go flying in a direction too quickly. Like I hope we have a
Mm-hmm.
character that does it for the first time. That would be interesting.
That would be, yeah, because it's like it almost reminds me of like dancers or like ballerinas when they're doing like the spins. They have to keep their point of sight in one, because if they don't, they like lose focus and start losing their spin. So it's kind of like the same thing where you have to be able to keep your mind within one perspective and then shift it so quickly and still feel like it's fluid and you're not discombobulating yourself. So you're right, it would be like a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun. Yeah. Watch someone else.
So our next chapter, I actually didn't mention this at the beginning of the chapter we just did. There was a time jump between those two, right?
Yeah,
4,500 years
definitely.
later. So Oath Boys gave up their blades, and then almost like a little over 4,000 years later, Homeboy's killing the Truthless is killing the king. And then we get 5 years later. So 4,505 years after Oath Boys' abandonment. And we start with Sen, who, what a way to start a book, okay? I mean, I know we technically started it a while ago, in the previous two chapters. However, I'm going to die, aren't I? I listened to the audiobook on this chapter first. I got to it in the audiobook first, and the narrator does this sentence justice. I was very taken aback. I was like, what are we doing? Are we going headfirst into a war? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Is this whole thing from Sen's point of view? Yes, it is. So this is when we meet Kaladin for the first time, but we meet Kaladin from someone else's point of view, and we don't necessarily meet him. We just like hear about him. So my first impressions with Kaladin, because I know he's one of the major characters, since like we get a point of view, well, since because of what else happens in this section, I know he's the main character. Um, but I originally got the vibe of like 30-year-old man, very strong, very stoic, and like very helpful, because the guy was just like, he takes in like little kids, and I was like, okay, maybe he had a kid, like and then he doesn't have him anymore and he's sad. So later on, when we find out how old Kaladin actually is, we'll talk about it, but I had some reactions. um and I was actually really disappointed that Sen was not a character, or he feels like he wasn't a character, because Kaladin ends up, it's this chapter that Kaladin ends up losing and getting captured. A storm bearer or shard bearer.
Yeah, shard bearer,
Shard bearer. Okay. So I was
I believe.
it was kind of funny that I told myself I wasn't going to be worried about characters dying when we went to these books, that like they were big books, like big things were going to happen, characters were probably going to die, and we're on chapter 1, and a character that's not going to probably be in any of the rest of the books most likely died, and I was like, is Sen not a character?
Right. Especially since you go through the waves with Sin. Like he's worried about, he's overwhelmed. Then he gets reassured that he's in good hands because this person is telling him that you can trust our leader. And then the way it ends is that him slowly fading out of consciousness, and we can assume that he perished. And that's just, yeah, super bummer.
Yeah.
It is interesting because Kaladin, that he was in full confidence of the circumstance. So it was really like that the person was able to give a breath, and then yeah. So the blow hurt that much more.
Yeah. Well, it shows a couple of different things that really like stick out to me. Is like, one, like possibly Kaladin's biggest flaw is like his overconfidence. Like there shouldn't have been one person that could be taken down and essentially like take down this whole thing, you know? Like if Kaladin was taken down, there should have been a second that could have stepped up and like solved the situation or like gotten him out of it. But it definitely feels like Kaladin charged in there more or less by himself, because he didn't have anyone of equal standing with him, beside him. And then because he couldn't match up to the Shard Blade on his own, everyone ended up fucked.
Mm-hmm.
So like later, like I love how Brandon writes this, because later when he's thinking about it, like I'm not empathizing with him. Like I am feeling the emotions I am feeling now. Like I am also sad that this guy did not get saved. I am also sad that you did not win. Like I'm not necessarily sad that he's a slave, and because that's an interesting part of the book, but I miss Sen, and I didn't even know him. I think how
Mm-hmm.
Kaladin feels. Is
Send
there
in the other person too. We met another person from his battalion, but I don't remember what his name is. The
um
older gentleman.
the older gentleman? I think his name is Dalit, because that's the other person I'm seeing in these pages. But oddly enough, because we only had Sen blacking out, or like fading away, for some reason in my mind I was like, okay, Sen died. But Dalit was like older, battle trained, had information and stuff like that. Like he probably was enslaved as well. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if he died, but it does make me a little like hopeful, maybe in like a book or two, Kaladin runs into either of these gentlemen, because that would be a very common thing in like fantasy, where you get enslaved, you get out of slavery, and then you come back and free people. You know, kind of like Daenerys freeing the slaves in Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm. Did they clarify? Did Kaladin clarify yet? Like why he's so like what Amram made him a slave for? Because he was part of Lord Amram's army.
Yeah, so it hasn't really been too clear, and it is, I think, mainly because I'm reading this through the first time. And because they very much are like later on talking about whether or not he's here for this reason or that reason, and they very much emphasize he is not here for the reason everyone's saying, but they don't like super get into the actual reason why he's here. Because like at the beginning I was very confused. I would say a lot of Kaladin stuff when I started reading it was just like, okay, you're not going to have a lot of information. He's going to be talking about a lot of stuff that like you don't necessarily understand or thinking about it, like just kind of go along with the flow. And so it didn't really register with me until I think like just before one of the last chapters that he may have actually personally known the guy who attacked him and enslaved him. In my mind, I had him as like main guy of bad army, Kaladin main guy of good army, fighting each other. Kaladin lost. And it wasn't until later in the chapters he talks about being a part of that guy's army where I was like, wait, so did your captain turn on you? And so that's it's not necessarily they were like hardcore being like this happened, but it was definitely like you don't have the accurate information entirely yet closer to those chapters. So at this point I would say I truly thought bad guy army, good guy army, good guy army lost. Did not get the nuance yet.
Yeah, because it seems interesting because I think Kaladin has a dislike for Light Eyes from the beginning, and then he becomes enslaved, and he makes it very obvious that he's got an issue with the Light Eyes then with his tone towards Amaram. So you're like,
Little hobbies with your book. I'm so distracted already. He's so cute.
He's cute. Don't eat it. Don't eat it. You can read it if you want, but don't eat it. But yeah, that is. Did you say his name? That's Hobbs. That's Hobbs.
Yes, this is hobbies. A little cat camera for everyone as they come and go. I'll eventually have a cat in here. Yeah. Chapter 2. So 8 months later, we got Kaladin. He is a slave now. He is a hungry boy. He is a sad boy. And this is the chapter that we meet Syl in. She's
only I think a little wisp at that point, little wind spirit, not talking.
Little wind spren,
but following him around.
I do find wind spren. There we go. The spren idea to be very interesting. For a few different reasons. The biggest thing is that like as someone who is constantly distracted because of struggling with ADHD and like very much hyper aware of everything around me, it would be so discombobulating to also have dozens of spren around random things all around me as the like life was going on.
Right. Yeah, I get that. It almost seems like it's like a blow up of our world anyway. Like if you get on a microscope, you see that things are moving around in like the dirt and stuff, and so they have like spren, but they're like I said, magnified so that you could see them. But I can see, yeah, it would definitely be overwhelming if like I think they mentioned in one of the chapters that it even one of the characters is like being creative and there's spren coming off because of like creativity. That would be probably alarming, but I mean if it's constant because it seems like it's across the land, it would be pretty normal.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do like the life spren. I like that made me like feel warm and fuzzy inside for some reason when they're like mentioning like tiny little green wigglies that are life spren, and I'm like, yeah, that's great.
See, the two that I really liked is I don't remember. I think it's fear or anger, but the red ribbons that come out of the ground. I think
remember which one.
God, I think they're for fear. There's a picture showing the different spren at some point, but I was just thinking like whenever you have that emotion, even if you're like trying to hide it from people, if like just red ribbons like come up around like your feet, like it'd be so much harder to hide like an emotion like that. But also later in the book, they have rot spren or like rotting spren whenever he's doing surgery with his dad. I was like, wouldn't that be amazing? You could not eat at like rotten food because you would see like the spren. But I mean, also it could be because they say it at one point, like when Shalon, like you were talking about, the creative spren were there. She moved over to writing, and they weren't there anymore. So maybe there is a certain level of
pain or rot or whatever has to
a
be there already for
density
them
of
to
the
be,
thing. Yeah.
has to be concentrated, the feeling.
Yeah. So.
That's interesting. I mean, that almost like, the concept of spirits, where humans or animals have such a strong connection to something that when they pass, like they're still kind of around. I mean, is it like that kind of maybe not, I don't know if it's a similar concept, but to like when there's just more energy somewhere, that's what attracts a certain thing. And this one just happens to have spren that are just more attracted to specific stuff.
Yeah. I do find it interesting also, we'll get to the chapter eventually, I'm talking a good portion of the chapter now though, that death spren are invisible. The moment that you say that in a book, my very next question is, how do you know that?
I didn't even catch that when I was reading, and that was
Really?
what I thought when you just said it. Was like, well, I mean, how do we know that they're invisible? Do they, especially since spren, well, they say that spren talk, right? Because in one of the chapters they talk about how people are used to spren talking, but it's always just nonsense. So you just learn really, really young to not even have conversations with them. So
Yeah.
maybe that's what it is. Like death spren are just, it's almost time. I don't know, like just whispering to
Yeah.
people. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
cause in the chapter he tells him to wash his hands to get rid of the rot spren and the death spren, and he talks about how I like not wanting to do it, and he's like, well, we can tell it works. The rot spren disappear even if the death spren are invisible. You see the rot spren disappear, you know it's working. And so that was my instinct. Was like, how do you know that there's death spren? But later on, his dad is very much like, this is what we're told, this is what we're taught, this is how it is. Very much one of those kind of people, not necessarily like, here's all the scientific reasons why we're doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that there is a whole lot that we are missing from this chapter, although I don't feel like we've talked about it a whole lot, but I'm down to move on if you are. Yeah, it's just like Kaladin being a slave and being sad and being beat up and being mistreated. I mean, I guess we could mention the fact that it's horrifying that the only shower that they get as slaves is rain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Not a shower make.
the only care they're being given is to make sure that they're staying in of value.
Yeah, that they're staying
As a slave.
alive to be sold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brandon very quickly just shows you the extreme harsh realities of war, the aftermaths of war, and like the mental state in that you have in this sort of situation. And I mean, honestly, it was super breading. It made me feel uncomfortable the whole way. So we get to chapter 3, which is the first time we meet Shallan.
Mm-hmm.
I have some opinions on Shallan.
Okay.
I wrote it, where is it here? I have quite a bit of highlighting on this page because of the things she thinks are atrocious. And it very much shows like what I consider the negatives in this society, which I do find very interesting that although it's a fantasy world, fantasy people, Brandon very much seems to be rooting it in what feels like earth misogyny. It's not the same sort of like racism because like the magic, the light eyes, the dark eyes, but those negatives in society I think are very much reflective of our own society, almost to the point where I was like, well, would it be exactly like this if all this magic was going on?
Well, because the first thing that comes to my mind is you see the imbalance of society as far as caste system with the sleeves. Because she has her sleeve that's an actual sleeve where she's got it cuffed her hand, her, what did they call it? Not her safe hand. Is it her safe hand?
Yeah, her safe hand's the one that's covered. Her free hand is the one she can use.
Yes. So your safe hand, when you're a light eyes or you come from money or status, is that you have that like cuff because it would be indecent to have the glove. And then you see later on in the book, Kaladin talks about his mother and how she always wore a glove,
Mm-hmm.
and he thought that was more practical. So no, it kind of goes with like that there's definitely an imbalance, right? Because there are some people who they wouldn't be able to do what Shalon's doing and have a sleeve on, which makes her kind of impractical, right? She can't use her hand as well as someone that has a glove on,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, or my assumption. I'm making an assumption, but it's like the perspective thing. So she thinks that it's more proper, and Kaladin's like, well, it's not. It it's not as effective. Like you can't be as efficient with it. So it's two different sides of the coin,
I
which
do
I thought was interesting.
I do feel like that is a beautiful way that Brandon has connected the characters, even though our characters are essentially nowhere near each other, and possibly, like, as far as I can tell, it would have to be a stroke of luck for them to end up in the same room at this point. So to bring back in that later chapter his mom, and then instantly thinking of like Shalon, that's really good writing. I don't like, though. We have no idea like why their hands are covered. Like, I feel like there is mystery going on at the beginning of the books, but there is a lack of explanation that I'm craving, and it's teetering on the point of annoyance. I feel like Brandon is
Yeah,
doing his best to walk that line.
yeah. Keep you not in the know. But yeah, I mean, he has made. I mean, in the book, they make mention of the sleeve having importance
Yeah.
for religion,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and it definitely, like, you seem like that's pretty heavy in society as far as like pull, because she wants to work. I'm jumping. But they like mention, one of the characters being a heretic, and
Yeah. No, we meet Jasna in this chapter.
oh, okay, dude,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, you're not jumping too far
uh,
ahead. I think the actual chapter that is called Heretic, that is mainly about Shalon, talking about it, is later, but we do meet Jasna here.
okay, yeah, Yasna. Um,
Yasna?
I thought that's what it was, Yasna.
Okay.
Yasna Colin.
Honestly,
Um,
like, I posted on my threads about this, but I mean, girl could do anything she wanted to me. Like, she hot. She walks into a room and takes command. She can literally turn things to smoke. Yeah, she can do whatever she wants to me.
mm-hmm.
I'm also
and
very,
and while still holding empathy too, you'll see that as well.
yeah,
She
yeah,
withheld it for a while, but she did eventually lead with that, with her final choice.
yeah. Okay, so we gotta get through this chapter, because I wanna talk about that chapter so bad now. But so
Okay.
I was reading through Shalon's thoughts about her beliefs on men and women and their perspective, like things that they're able to do and how certain men shouldn't read, and and her view on slaves. And I just put halfway down the page, I was like, I'm pretty sure I hate this character. Um, it is going to make me a bit uncomfortable if her growth is just her realizing she's a horrible person. I'm hoping
Mm.
that Brandon's got some more scenes in order to make me like her. Because right now, like, if she went through like a normal fantasy arc and just realized that she was like a bigot and became not a bigot, like, there's no redemption for me for her.
Okay. Oh gosh. Without any, I don't know. I'm not going to spoil anything. I will say that I do like Shalon.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Well, then I did.
Yeah.
I think it's in this chapter that's the first time that she thinks about her dead dad. Which we have an interesting perspective on, sharing a dead dad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the first time Brandon wrote like Shalon thinking about her father, she like thinks about her family, she thinks about her dad, she thinks about the death, and then she's very sharply like, don't think about that. And then like continues on. And when I read that, I was instantly very uncomfortable. I was like, that's not necessarily how like grief works most of the time. Like, if you are going to aggressively push it down that hard, it tends to just immediately pop back up. Like, you don't
Mm-hmm.
actually really have the ability to press it down, or it will come out in like worse ways. And so I was very uncomfortable with the first way he wrote it, but then he writes it again in the next chapter that Shalon is it a point of view in. And he does the same thing where she thinks about her family, she thinks about her dad, she thinks about the death. She goes, no, do not think about this death. And then proceeds for the next like page and a half to think about every single person in their family, every event up until then, and continuously tries to get herself to not think about it. And then thinks about it a little bit and then dives into her artwork. And I do understand that, like, as a writer, he's trying to obviously hide what happened. Like, he doesn't want us to know exactly what happened to her dad yet, and how, like, people died, and how everything ended up happening. But, like, it is making it feel a little less accurate to me.
Maybe it's something that she's just really not ready to process, would be the only thing I could say.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I feel like the more that you learn, the more it makes sense. It's like, I would say the best way that I would say it was like, it's like compartmentalizing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for that. So, but I don't know. I can't really talk about it. I don't know without spoiling anything. Because you're right. He's trying to yeah, ferry around it,
Yeah.
prance around it.
Yeah, so I guess I would say at this point, the main point that I'm trying to make is that as a fresh reader, as someone who has read fantasy, like, I understand the written reason why you're not telling me these things, but it is making me feel like Shalon's grief is not like Brandon doesn't truly know how to write this kind of grief. Like someone at this age losing their father abruptly, trying to literally like essentially white knuckle their way through not grieving in order to survive. Sure, she could like start like writing and like eventually get into the groove and get out of it, but she instantly turns to writing, instantly gets out of the groove, instantly like flows into being creative, when it's like, no, like, give me some tears. Be like, I'm trying to hold it in, I'm trying to hold it in, and like, oh, there's a couple of tears here. Let me start drawing so that my head's pointed down so people don't see this, instead of just being like, and I'm gonna be okay now. It's just a little like abrupt.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, when we get farther on in the chapters, there's another part where it's about involving like mental health, and I didn't necessarily agree with it. Didn't resonate with me how he wrote it
Okay.
either, but we can talk about that a little later on.
Okay.
I'll tell you when
So
it comes up.
we meet Yasna. We get a little bit of a description about why Shalon's here, why Shalon, she wants to be essentially like her, not assistant, apprentice. And what I find very hilarious is that Shalon is like so desperate to get there, and she gets there and she like starts talking to her, and the girl's like, I'm surprised you even got here. And Shalon's like, I'm so glad she's not mad at me. I was like, the girl just told you she never planned on actually seeing you. Like, she planned on this failing, and your first reaction was, oh, thank goodness I'm not in trouble. It's like, oh, girl, like, you gotta realize you are attaching yourself to someone who is probably not the greatest for you.
She did not expect that little girl to show up. That's definitely right. And she was willing to let her spend money and time
And
to find
essentially
her.
be stranded. Like, she would have gone there and not been there.
Yeah, but I think that like that also probably goes to show of what she's been experiencing as far as people trying to become like work under her, or we use the word apprentice. I think they use a different word in the book.
Yeah, but like, it shows that she's putting up in essentially like unbelievable barriers for women to come ask her for this, because at this point she's like, you have to move across land and ocean at an incredible speed to keep up with me to even attempt this. Like, that's the level I'm looking for.
Yeah, she could have sent a note and been like, hey, by the way, I really just don't like training. It's not my
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she still, like, I feel like it's one of those people that's like, I don't think anyone else is gonna get this reference but you. But Raul from the Lioness Rampant series, he's told for years, you need a knight, you need a knight, you need a knight. And he's like, I don't want one though, because of what they would experience. And then he finally gets a knight and is like, I'm sorry you're going through this, but yeah, I did need you. Like, I needed a break from taking care of myself all the time. And so I'm hoping that this is going to happen with these two. Like,
Yeah. And so we've seen Ch.11. Have we seen her draw yet in this chapter?
No, that is not this chapter.
Okay.
Yeah.
She hasn't drawn. Okay.
Not yet.
That we'll continue on then, because I think that she's already done she's blinked already. I don't know if you picked that up, that I thought that was really cool, of like he where she takes like a almost like photogenic snapshots of her mind, and Brandon uses always the phrase of her like taking a very intentional blink to capture it. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of stuff in that chapter that I think we both want to talk about, so we do need to get there. But
need to get better at names. And I'm jumping forward. I'm jumping forward a lot.
I think us making up names is bueno. And I think the jumping forward is mainly because the first 4 chapters are all kind of set up, and it's not necessarily set up world-wise, it's set up character emotion-wise, which I haven't experienced a whole lot before. Like, you really don't know a lot about the world. If I was rereading the books, there would have been, a heck of a lot I could probably talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely sets up a lot of the knowledge of the world of just the characters interacting and saying things of like, oh, this is constant and very offhanded, like, oh, I'm just holding my book with my free hand, with my sleeve, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just in a few seconds before, I was thinking to myself, I was like, how does she use her hand at all? And then like, oh, yeah, with things that she can hold, she's not over here trying to tie a knot with her free hand, but so.
Yeah. But it definitely does feel like, as far as I know, that these are like in-world books. So this like story that we're reading is like in-world. I could be wrong. Like, don't clarify if I'm not. But it definitely feels like people writing their story versus like a historian writing their story. Because like we're not getting like a whole lot of dates. We're not getting a whole lot of events. We're not getting sort of like any definitions of any kind. We're just getting like how I feel about this and how I think other people should be feeling about this.
It's a Beam.
This is Beam. What's her whole name?
Oh, Death Star Hyper Beam, Conqueror of Worlds.
And when she does, conquer all of our worlds and our hearts.
She sure does. Beam for short. Little Beam.
We did it.
Not so little anymore.
Made it to Bridge 4. I wonder if you can see that. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I can. Oh, kind of. I can kind of see it. It counts.
As far as I know, this is like a pretty big chapter in the community. I'm completely basing that off of people that just love Bridge 4.
Yep.
There's a lot of merch for
They're family.
So, which is hilarious because you essentially lose 90% of them every 2 days. So it's not until the end of, I think, Kaladin's next chapter that we actually get anyone's real name after, like, the first guy who helps Kaladin out.
I'm sorry, cat interruption. That's the elusive Morty. I think that's no good. Sorry.
You do not need to apologize for the kitties.
Yeah, so yes, Bridge 4, how does he arrive there? He gets sold. Yeah. He gets sold to Vlok, I think is how you pronounce his name, to the new guy, Gaz? Well, Gaz. He doesn't go straight to Gaz. He's bought by a woman. Which I don't know if they don't. She's in the Colon army, but I don't think that they say that she's a Colon. I don't think they say anything about her at all, really. They just say, like, they call her ladyship. I don't even think you get her name. So, my assumption was she wasn't important. I thought it was kind of interesting that the slaver ends up telling Kaladin that he didn't do it, like, out of spite. He just told him that, not even the truth, because it's still a lie. They've agreed that him saying he's a deserter is a lie. But he did it to save his own skin, because he's like, well, if they could come back onto me. And so I don't know. He mentioned that, how like the slavers trade, even though you're evil for doing it, you're doing it out of desperation. And this man is obviously just pulled by desperation. You'd think he would have been motivated to hurt Kaladin because of what Kaladin's done to him, but that wasn't it. It was still just self-preservation. Well, I find it interesting that he mentions it at all.
Because at that point, like,
Yeah.
Kaladin's not his problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it
So it's
truly
almost
doesn't
like he
matter.
said it because he felt guilty.
And so, like, Kaladin, I think it's this chapter, or it might have been the previous one, where he says, like, um, and I've felt this emotion before, it's a really hard emotion to deal with when you really like someone that you know is, like, a piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is the first mention we get of the honor chasm because Kaladin comes in and they realize that there is not a bridge leader for Bridge 4 currently since he is taking himself down the honor chasm.
Mm-hmm.
Which that wording, I would say 90% of people instantly know what that is. Which I find like 10 out of 10, Brandon, for coming up with a name like that. I don't think there's anything else like super major that happens. I was a little confused with how the bridge was set up. I will say I did Google that because the way he describes the bridge does not work very well for my brain who can't picture things.
Oh, yeah, what is it? My interpretation, tell me if I'm right, is like just like a massive shield of sorts that's also doubles up as a bridge. Like it's no?
It's
Okay.
more horrifying than that. Okay, so what it essentially is, I wish I had grabbed my photo of it. What essentially is like so it's essentially like a wooden plank. Like think of this as the actual body of the bridge, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what it is it's 3 men across, 5 men down. Um it was like another specifier of some kind. I don't remember what it is though. So essentially what it is that these guys go under the bridge and there's like a canoe like hole that they go up on and then there's a bar. So essentially, yeah, so they're
Mm-hmm.
holding the bridge. So what that means is that anyone who is not on the outer rim, right? So not on the front here, not on either one of these sides, like the center and the mid back center cannot see anything.
The toss up is that you're also not in front of the enemy, the easiest one to shoot with arrows. Because what you're saying is that in the front path or whatever, there's that row of men that can see, but they're also, the reason why they can see is because they're running forward, they have open space, and on the other side of the chasms are the enemy,
Right.
shooting at them to try to stop the bridge in its place.
Right.
From moving forward.
So what they say is that when you're a bridge leader, usually the spot that you pick, because you get to pick your spot when you're a bridge leader, is going to be one of these back 2 corners, because you can still see, but you were the least likely of the outer people to die. And you can like say commands and stuff like that. So what I think Kaladin, when he first gets in, he gets one of the center spots because he can't see anything. The only person that talks to him, I think, is the guy next to him. And absolutely horrifying, the description of blood dripping down him as he's like using the bridge, like not even the people dying around them, but like putting down the bridge and then people dying on it, picking up that bridge that is then covered in blood and continuing to run. Like it's just absolutely horrifying imagery.
It really is. And it just really goes to show just how despicable Gaz is for just being slightly upset and not giving this person any tools to bear something that's already unbearable. Is absolutely crazy.
See, in this, like, I would say, like, not even exclusively Gaz, because Gaz feels like he is a bad, like, captain, right? He doesn't, like, his bridge people are worse off than other people's bridge people. But the way that they have formatted, like how they're even handling this war, is what I have a huge issue with, and what I feel like Kaladin slowly begins as he gets like the clarity in his brain and realizes like he wants to change stuff or whatever. Realizes that like this is not the most effective way to be doing this. Like I don't know what person came up with this structure. I don't know if they like cared more about money or time, but for a country to essentially be like hand over fist throwing hundreds of men to their deaths. This is not the optimal way to be doing this. Like even if we're not
Well,
going to be
they're dark
valuing their
eyed.
life. No, even if we, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, even if they don't value their life, there is financially a better way to be doing this, because your turnover rate of essentially like your manual labor is so aggressive. Like, even if you just like created false like walls of some sort, or like modified anything in any sort of way, like it very much feels like it's not just gas, but the entire society that's saying these people are not even worth the money that we could save to save them. Like, we
Right.
literally could be
Well, I guess,
saving money to treat them better.
yeah. I guess it's probably because it's that whole concept of like you can tell yourself that someone deserves their misery or their punishment because of their actions. So all those people that are there is because of something that they supposedly did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Paladin crime of being a slave.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't know everyone else's story, but that's probably what it is. It's like they're like, oh, it's two birds in one stone. We're getting this war handled. Yeah, it's might not be the most cost effective, but these people deserve it anyway. It's kind of like the punishment that we needed to give them. So it's like, let's get it done
Yeah, and
this
the
way.
hierarchy of their
Yeah.
brains, they're less than cattle, and just with a bridge, that's all it took, and Brandon was able to convey all of that. Like, this is so beautifully written. I understand why people like Bridge 4, because the whole time I was reading it, I was just like, this is terrifying.
One thing though is I don't want to clarify because I'm not sure if I understand correctly. I think Gaz is supposed to be like the overseer of all the bridges. Bridge 4 just happens to be the one that Kaladin was assigned to because he assigned him to it. Gaz was the one that was like had the choice because he controls all the bridges
All the
technically.
bridges? Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I guess
That's why he was like he was basically like you can control everything else, but I control Bridge 4 because Gaz is supposed to be the leader of or the overseer of the other bridges. I think.
Okay, because it is specified that when you do wrong on other bridges, you're put to Bridge 4. Like, Bridge 4 is essentially like the black sheep of the bridges. And so I find it interesting that, like, while you say, Gaz is a horrible, like, captain, he's not necessarily treating all the bridges the same if he is controlling them all. Like, he's specifically, like, taking out some sort of emotion on Bridge 4 by sending them the worst or the rebellious or
Right. Which almost goes to show just how important it is to have proper leadership, right? Someone put Gaz in his position, but he's a bitter person. And so he was told to put Kaladin in a special place. That wasn't to put him in
a
Bridge
good
4
place.
that's known to be shot at the most. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
supposed to be used as like a proper resource, and Gaz was like throwing that away. So not only did he, you know, disregard Kaladin's life and be really petty and on that front, but he also didn't even do his job technically.
Yeah.
So it's like he's hurting everybody. He's bitter and he's mad and he's hurting everybody. So it just kind of goes to show it's like you might not think that you have a lot of control, but you do of yourself at the very least.
Yeah.
So
so we will come back to Bridge 4 to talk about some very interesting interactions. But for now, we are going back to Shalon. And this is after the instance with the black smoke. So I guess we could have spoken about that a little bit in the last section. But she gets to see Yasna's soul casting. Is what it's called. Which is very interesting as someone who has not experienced this magic at all. Once again, Brandon did his. I'm not going to tell you anything really about it. You're just going to have to figure it out as you see what happens. So,
he did leave it frustratingly vague because he only said something about the stone being turned into smoke or whatever, right? Gas? Smoke?
Black smoke, specifically black smoke. Yeah.
Yeah. And like every majority of magic systems I've seen, it's like you have to put energy in or at least use your own energy to make something happen. And it doesn't really say that the soulcaster like drains its energy from its crystals that are in or anything like that. It's just like bam, here's this I just reformed this entire hallway. Like
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, then it does
Um.
specify that like her father was using it to create deposits of something for him to be
Mm-hmm.
mining, and it can create food. So like
Mm-hmm.
so the limiting resource of this is that there aren't a lot of them, I'm assuming, because of how like
Right.
precious that is.
I I think it says, because we see it with something else that they mentioned, that yeah, it can make food, but a certain type of material can make food, right? So is it a certain soul caster, or is it a certain material that you like say like that was black, I was stone and it turned into smoke? Is it something that you mine or find a certain material you use the soul caster on and that turns into food? Like say only like platinum,
As
for
far
example,
as
can be turned.
I can tell based off of the descriptions of the magic, it's that the soul casters do a specific thing. So the soul caster that Yasna has turns things into black smoke. So it's essentially like a disintegrating soul stone or soul caster
Mm,
versus
okay.
what Shalon's dad had, which was a creation soul caster. So I'm assuming it could create anything of stuff. But
Mm.
there could be just a soul caster for just food.
You think that would be a flawed plan then? But yeah, so ch- switching out the soulcaster, what would be the plan if the soulcasters are going to do different? The one's broken, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
the other one, like she can't go back and make new deposits.
No, Shalon's plan is obviously very flawed. And not
Yeah.
only that, to let someone who essentially like the entire family thinks is the shyest, least equipped person to be doing all of this stuff, out to do it alone without any sort of like spontaneous assistance as needed, like they're setting her up to fail. And I mean, it's out of
This is like a
desperation.
dysfunctional family.
Yeah,
Yeah, desperation for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't find out until later on, just like she really is their only option, essentially, with how they're looking. Does not bode well for yeah the Shalon fam. But in this chapter, she proves herself, and Yasna decides, okay, you can be one of my apprentices if you go and learn all this stuff and come back to me. So she says, like, I'll
Mm-hmm.
accept you, but how about you get lost for a decade and then come back to me after learning? And Shalon says,
Very
bet.
similar. Yeah, right? Yeah, very similar to the, oh yeah, you can meet me in this town. I'll be there. Just hop on a boat and come on over. No biggie. And then you're like you do see more about the caste system, and men aren't supposed to read, which is really interesting. So they have very strict roles as far as men and women.
And I do just want to specify for all of the viewers that we are actually shoving chapter 7 and chapter 8 together. I just realized the next chapter is also Shalon, and the next chapter is when most of this is happening, but that's fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
These two chapters are together. They're the same point of view. There's just two different things happening. So technically,
Was
she
it split
doesn't.
because of time?
No, it's split because Shalon is like talking to someone else. Shalon is talking to
Or was it the man of faith?
Brother Capsule. Yeah, yeah. So we get a little bit about the faith. We get a little bit about her being a heretic. He asked Shalon, are you going to try to convert her? Stuff like that. And then we go into her actually talking,
The
deciding she
attractive
can be
man of faith,
the
she said.
attractive man of faith. He was
She
awesome.
she couldn't help herself but mention.
Which is like so at this point, right, it hasn't been specified how old Shalon is. How old does she feel to
Mm-hmm.
you?
15, 16 probably.
Yeah, 16 is what I was thinking. She was about 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kaladin feels like he's 30, and Shalon feels like he's 16. To me at
Right.
this point, so I was a bit confused as to why the ages were so vastly different, but okay. I don't think there's probably a lot we're missing in this chapter, as per usual, but I can't tell what's super important yet or not.
But just give me what is that chapter? I should have my
This
book.
is the one where Shalon is trying to get a book from a guy. Her and Yalb like kind of Y'all does it on his own, and Shalon thankfully just like hops on the bandwagon when she realizes what's going on. But Y'all helps her get a discount price on some books. Um, this chapter
Great
very
theatrics.
much feels like just showing you the true misogyny of the world, which I really like. It definitely shows you why Shalon feels the way that she does. Like if people handled me like that, like I'd be thinking the same way. Like, men don't deserve to read if you're gonna act like this anytime I want to read. Like,
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also interesting too that she's not like completely naive to think that all men don't read. She was just saying it's proper for him to act like he can't read in front of me. He might have read those books. So I thought
right.
that was kind of interesting as well. So it's like almost like, do you think that probably her family does the same thing where her brothers read behind closed doors? It's just because it's a society thing. Um, I don't know.
Which is so interesting. Like the to be so focused on, oh, society says that you need to present as inept at this. So how dare you present as someone who is capable like
Mm-hmm.
everybody else?
Or even like Kaladin, doesn't he know how to read glyphs? They said that, so he's the man of the book.
Right, but I mean, I get I would consider like being a surgeon being sort of like a higher profession that requires reading.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. You think that in that circumstance it would have just defaulted his mother to being the doctor. But it's again, it's like, I guess, positions of more power and prestige is still handled by the men, and then the women in the back are just doing, I don't know, the
Well,
reading portion and working with it. Is it a collaboration always?
well, that's the. I think it was really shown in the scene with the gentleman's bookstore is that the women do what the men consider to be like a remedial task at this point. I can read. I have read. If it's reading in order to figure out something, or reading to find you a book, or reading to do something small, like that is beneath me. That is woman's work.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think that
Well, yeah,
really
because
shows when Shalon is like, well, what about this book? And he's like, well, I've never read that book.
mm-hmm. Yeah, or have it read to me is the phrase, because he again he's only his wife reads him the books. That's what is done.
Which,
Very
like,
interesting.
completely aside, wouldn't that be a freaking wonderful relationship? Let me just lay down and chillax, and you read me my thick boy novels, okay? These eyes are tired.
Right? Oh, hey, it's Audible, basically doing it. Okay, yeah, so she gets all the books that she needs,
Mhm.
and then she brings them back to Yasna
No,
in the next chapter.
she brings them to the alcove and starts studying. Yasna notices her on her own. Shalon actually like kind of is a badass in this moment. Is like, okay, bet I'll take those. I'll go get books. I'll go study, and I'm gonna sit right here and I'm gonna study, and I'm gonna just make sure that you don't leave. Because if you're leaving, I'm following you until I'm at the point where you're going to accept me. Like just because you said I can't be your apprentice doesn't mean I can't wander around the same places as you and read history for the next year.
Oh. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I thought that she literally got the books of like certain topics that Yasna said that she needed less working in, and then she kind of showed the books and she's like, "Look, Yasna, look, I have all this knowledge I just acquired." And it
Yeah.
was like because of the play on of words, she was like, "Oh, look at this clever girl." It makes more sense that it was because of her just her tenacity.
Yeah.
Is really where Yasna's like, "Well, I guess I'm gonna be stuck with her anyway." And since you're here,
Yeah, it's kind of funny that
let
you
me go
missed
room
it
you.
because Yasna literally walks over and is like essentially like, you impertinent child. Okay. And like sets up a chair and like starts looking at the books that she's looking at. All
Mm-hmm.
right, we're on chapter 9, Damnation. And this is Kaladin's chapter. Um Kaladin is not doing great. Syl's really worried about him. He hasn't spoken in days. I feel like again that this chapter probably has a decent amount, but it really feels like Kaladin just being sad, like fully putting,
Well, there's no rest.
yeah,
There's no
fully
rest
putting
for
us through
any
this
of the
mental state.
bridges. Yeah. I mean, they even say that, like, they don't run every day. They don't even run necessarily every few days, but because it's such a traumatizing experience, they're exhausted. They don't feel like they have any reprieve. I always thought also, is this where is this his first experience to Bridge 4? Like the first run in this chapter?
No, the last one was the first run. I believe this is the first time he like witnesses, I think, a younger person die.
Okay.
Yeah. The boy that is with him in later chapters mentally. This is the point, because he starts off with saying, like, out of the 25 men that we started with, 23 of them are gone. So it's me and one other person, or essentially, or two other people, and then, like, yeah, Tien dies.
That's not the person's name.
It's not? What's the guy's name then? Or
I don't think you don't get to know the young person's name.
oh, is that why he calls
He
him
does
young
say
boy?
Tien. Yeah.
Okay.
Tien is someone to Kaladin, but that wasn't.
Oh, another young
That's not
boy.
them.
Oh, okay, yeah, the youth that reminded him of Tien. Okay.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that as before. Tien's the youth that makes him have such a soft spot for younger boys.
Okay.
Being in the army.
Okay.
And having needing help, basically.
Yeah.
But it was just yeah. And I mean, that even goes to show it's like he's like Kaladin can handle his own suffering, but what he can't handle is other people suffering.
Yeah.
So yeah, he really spirals. It seems like. I mean, that's even why he couldn't really get himself together with this when he was a slave, is because he was thinking about how everyone that had built up at his team that he told he could trust, he lost them all. So it's like, yeah, that's what the failure that really hurt him. Not losing his freedom or anything like that. So,
and I do find it
and you see
interesting
that again
that
with this.
this is the point that he finally, like, lets the emotions win. Like, up until now, Syl has been, like, worried about him and has mentioned the fact that he doesn't cry like everyone else. And this boy breaks down, and he spends the time to go and find his body and breaks down. Like, I think this is the point where Kaladin truly realizes that, like, lots of things have happened up until now, but there is no going back. Like, even if at this point he does find a way out or does survive this, like, these deaths are going to be with him, and they're going to keep happening unless something changes. And so I think this is really the point where he starts to reach towards, like, is there any reason for me to be here if this is just what will happen from now on?
Yeah, he doesn't feel like he can make any change anymore. He's tried over and over and over again, and it's failed. So at this point, it feels so pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we head into chapter 10, which is 9 years ago, and we meet Cal's dad.
The surgeon.
And this is when we interact with the rot spren and the death spren that we were talking about a little bit prior. And like I said, his dad very much seems to be one of those people that's like, this is what we're told, this is what we're taught, this is how the world works. Like, he doesn't necessarily, like, super question things. But it also seems like it's kind of a survival tactic, because they do talk about how, like, even when his dad does his absolute best and he's happy that he was able to save most of the girl's fingers, that she only lost one, like, the reaction from everyone else is going to be, how dare you, she lost one.
So people get comfortable in something, and they think that it's no longer a privilege. It's something that they just naturally should come to them. I think they mentioned that in the book, where he's like, yeah, when I first came here, they were happy because I was fixing things, and now I can't do it perfect. It's not good enough.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. He seemed to be, to cope with that, he's just kind of doing the thing.
So he's able to fix the fingers except for the one. And I do feel like this chapter may be a little bit foreshadowing Kaladin's arc, where it is very much like Kaladin is about to step up right at the end of this section. Kaladin is about to step up as bridge leader and change things in a situation in which is horrible, and some people would think that like there is no saving. He's going to save as much as he can, even though he may lose the finger, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But is this going to be one of those reactions where, because it just started, people are very much like, let's do this, to later on be like expecting so much of Kaladin? Like, is that like where this is going to go? I'm a bit curious. But then we find out about the Thelena, which is just
Yeah,
very briefly mentioned by Kaladin's dad. Kind of like the point of it is like kids talk about things. People talk about like the wars that are being fought and the bad guys. But if you're not talking from a place of fact, like this probably isn't accurate. So I think Kaladin brings up like fighting them, and he's like, "No, we don't fight them. We don't even have a border with them. Like, it's not how these work. That's just people saying things to say things."
Mm.
And so it's like it shows that like his dad is building him a foundation of like, don't just take everything at face value. If you don't 100% know it's fact, you have to take it with a grain of salt. You have to assume that it could possibly be completely wrong.
Mm-hmm. What sound advice.
Right? Right? I mean, I didn't really think about it until we were talking right now that this chapter, like, perfectly sets up a precursor to Kaladin's next chapter, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like,
Which is,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, is this the last chapter? Chapter 11 is the next chapter.
Yes, we are about to go into chapter 11. I do want to mention, though, that his dad does bring up the heralds, as well as I think another the Radiance. So I'm assuming that has something to do with Oath Boys, but we don't get any qualifiers or description. So Brandon's just giving us a little more crumbs. Yep.
Crumbs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we are going to dive into chapter 11, which is the last chapter of this section, which is our boy Kaladin. And oh my goodness, what a chapter.
Yeah. Really. What a death and a rebirth.
Well, I mean, Syl comes back, which is nice.
Yeah, she went on a journey. Did you hear her say that she almost lost herself, but she didn't. She came back.
Oh my goodness. See, that's this chapter has so many crumbs I could almost make a cookie. Almost. Because you find out she's been with him since prior to his capture. She doesn't understand what's going on with her as much as he doesn't understand what's going on with her.
She knows that she's drawn to him and has been. Yeah.
She instinctually was told by something within her that if she wandered for too long, too far, she would be lost. And so he's like a tether essentially. But before she goes, she says like, this is an instinct I am feeling. Like there is no rhyme or reason to it. Like I'm going to do it, and it ends up well. So that makes me worried. So the next time she has an instinct, is she just going to just do whatever? Like
She's a thing of the wind, of course. Of
but
course she will.
oddly enough, it feels weird because she is a wind spren, and I would say there's nothing windy about her. Like
She's like she dances. She like she's flying around and flittering around, and I don't know if it talks too much about it now, but you'll see that she likes to interact with the world. She's very like whimsical and silly and um blown in whatever direction that catches her attention. That's what I think of is like very windy. Is that she seems to be like, oh,
flightful.
oh.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes sense. In this chapter, she also does change into like a sky eel like shape. and gives Kaladin a poisoned leaf. So she
Mm-hmm.
can
You have to.
shapeshift on choice, more or less.
She can. I thought that was very. Yeah, she got the same leaf that he had gotten before they dropped. I'm trying to see if maybe I could.
Yes. Those pictures were
That would be
awesome.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it shows. I believe in the bottom left of that page, it shows like one actually picking up a fish, and it describes in the book how she wraps herself around the leaf. And I was like, oh, that's a perfect picture because essentially that's what she looks like, except she's got like a leaf.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably not gonna. I mean, well, I tried.
Anyone who has the physical book, though, will know where it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she can shapeshift.
Mm-hmm.
She loses herself if she gets too far away from Kaladin.
Mm-hmm.
She remembers him back in his oh my god, goodness, what's the name of that lord that he was at? Amaram.
Mm-hmm. And when he's in Imran's army. Yeah.
Did she remember him back before then, or is that when they first met? Was Amaram's army?
She
She
says
first
that
saw him.
she was originally drawn to him in Amaran's army because he cared for his comrades. The
Mm-hmm.
emotion that his comrades felt towards him is what originally drew her.
Mm.
So I
Okay.
think maybe it's like the energy that was coursing, like, between those him and that person, like drew her, and then she like all as well wants that energy, so has sort of attached herself to Kaladin.
Right. Which is interesting. That's what we were kind of just talking about with Spren earlier in this, is that it seems like it's whenever it's like a big collection of some kind of energy, that's when there a certain type of Spren is gathered to it. So it's interesting that obviously in the history that they haven't seen talked about wind Spren
Mm-hmm.
connecting to someone for a reason. It's yeah. I
Well,
wonder why.
I am curious too because I'm pretty sure, and I'm gonna look back to make sure I'm 100% accurate. But it's only Kaladin that mentions she's a Windspren. She doesn't specifically say, like, I am a Windspren. She doesn't really know necessarily what's going on with her. So, like, what if we are witnessing like a Spren transformation, like maybe even a creation of like a new kind of Spren? Like
Mm-hmm.
her original Windspren nature and his energies have mixed in order to create like essentially like the new level Spren, which would be
Okay.
interesting. Because that if it was something like that, then there's a possibility of it happening again. Which I do truly feel like it's not exclusively a Kaladin Syl thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
But you have the right energy to mix with the spread energy, is what your opinion is about,
I
or
don't
your
even
theory.
know if it's necessarily the right energy. Maybe it's the amount of energy. Like
Okay.
because it's specifically Cal is the only one who can see her like on like a daily basis. Like who knows if maybe Amorion has his own sort of like negative wind spread from all of his like, betrayals. Like that was a big betrayal between him and Kaladin, it seems like.
Amaranth, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so a big energy like that could have done something. Okay, so now we are going to talk about Kaladin's unaliving attempt. I do want to just, for a warning, anyone though that hasn't necessarily read the books, I don't know why you'd be in this book club if you hadn't read these books, but if you hadn't, we're going to go into detail about people unaliving themselves because Kaladin does essentially have an attempt in this chapter that Syl saves him from, more or less. And I'm assuming we both have certain emotions about it. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
I wish I could go back and read the paragraph. I just remember feeling like um it didn't feel quite right as far as like his giving up sense. I don't necessarily know.
So I have here, I did section off a part of it, and I wrote a post-it note as well. And my post-it note says, Brandon Sanderson is making everything big in this intense scene, making everything feel normal. So the way that I was feeling when I finished the scene is like this does not feel like an unaliving scene in reality. It feels like it was written for a movie.
Mm-hmm.
In the way of like the beats are weird.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because I do like the part of like of Syl bringing him belief
Mm-hmm.
and that tethering him back to like what his goal was. But I thought it was interesting how he basically said that like he had to like kill off the old Kaladin to move forward into the new. And I don't know if I necessarily like it because it's almost like he was saying that the old Kaladin wasn't good enough to take on this new task. And it was more so like the Kaladin was just so deep in the depths of depression that they lost sight of what made them, which was to help others and yeah. So I don't know.
Well, he does mention, like, when he goes to talk to, I think, the gentleman of Bridge 4 afterwards, that he feels like he's going back to the Kaladin prior to being a slave. Okay, yeah. So it says here, had they always looked that pathetic? Yes, they had. Kaladin was the one who had changed, not they. He felt a strange dislocation as if he'd allowed himself to forget, if only in a part, the last 9 months. He reached back across time, studying the man he had been, the man who still fought and fought well. He couldn't be that man again. He couldn't erase the scars, but he could learn from that man as a new squad leader learned from the vitreous generals of the past. Kaladin Stormblast was dead, but Kaladin Bridgeman was of the same blood, a descendant with potential.
Yeah, so I took that as like he literally was killing off even the one from Amram and the slave gentleman and learned from them, but he's not the same person of them.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know if that's right because of my experience of depression is it's I can't kill it off and become renew. I can work with it and then make myself more resilient to bouncing back out of the depths. But I don't know if it's ever I don't that was just what bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
Um but I mean it is there can be the small things of the kindness of a loved one.
Yeah.
Even misinterpreting things incorrectly, but you realizing that you're tethered to that can pull you back from the literal edge, which
Mm-hmm.
is where he was on.
Well, I
No,
know
figuratively.
I've seen some live streams where Brandon has talked about the fact that he now does much more research, much more in depth, hands on with people in the mental health industry and people who have experienced it than he originally did, especially at the beginning of like Mistborn, let's say. So this could also be just one of those things where he wasn't up to par yet with talking to people that had dealt with these kinds of things. Because I do feel like it's very different to have an unaliving attempt that fails versus an unaliving attempt that you choose not to do at the last second. I have experienced the latter. I've experienced what Kaladin has, and although there is a clarity and there is a slight shift when you go from choosing to end yourself to not end yourself in such a quick moment, there is a shift, but it's not so drastic. And unfortunately, you don't have the luxury, like you said, of leaving behind the thoughts, the feelings, the issues that you were just in. You do get clarity. You do get broken from those delusions of the world and everything around me would be better if I was just gone. Like that does take a step back. So you have the part of your brain that's like, no, you know this is wrong. You know you have to continue. You know you can do this is louder, but it doesn't completely override what you were just going through.
Mm-hmm.
So I found this scene to be very interesting in its beats, and I like understand what emotions you should be getting out of the chapter, but I ended the chapter honestly laughing. I found it quite funny the way that these beats were made, because how he describes it is it's like Kaladin is going through his mental state, he chooses that he wants to do this. So he gets up, he leaves. Gaz tells him, take off your vest and shoes. because we don't want to have to come take him off your dead body. So he takes those off. He has all the time walking to the chasm to think about it, right? He's at the very edge of the chasm and begins to put a foot into the chasm. And then Syl appears. And in that instance says things, and then he takes his step, like his foot back, and teeters on the edge.
Excellent balance.
The way that this is described is so anime, it's painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. At the very least, if it was more realistic, it would have been like Syl came back and his foot popped back, and then she started talking. It wouldn't have been like,
But no,
my
she's
foot's
a
gonna hang
wind
out there for a while.
spren. This is such a perfect point. You have him put his foot, and then she, full force, appears, hits him in the chest, finally is able to have like a little bit of physical matter that can interact with him, and he forcibly has to take 2 steps back so he does not die. That would have made this seem perfection. But instead, I was sitting here giggling because he was over here like, I got 1 foot over the edge and I ain't falling.
Yeah, missed opportunity. That's okay.
Yeah. And then he's teetering on the edge, and I find it so interesting that you liked the leaf as a callback. Because I thought, in my head, I was like, so he's trying to kill himself. So Syl brings him something to kill himself. And so he has a double, I'm not going to do this moment. Like, I felt like it was very heavy-handed and unnecessary. I did not even connect it. Even if they even said, like, something about the previous leaves. I was just like, okay, yeah, so he had leaves before and she has a leaf now. Like, this is such a weird construed way to bring Syl back at this moment to have this scene specifically is how I felt.
I think it has to do with it's his reminder of his want to take care of like younger people. I don't know if that's the right word, but like he uses the thing like it was very like silly of her. She didn't even realize what the leaf was. It was she wanted to make him happy.
I love
So
that.
it's yeah. So I guess that maybe that's what it was trying to show is like the leaf was like, and especially since if in the other chapters if he very fleetingly thinks of using the leaf to unalive himself. It's mostly that he wants to like you put it on use it on the slaver. That's like what the leaf is. Some more of like
that's what I was expecting when
malice place.
When it came back up, when Syl brought it up, I was like, oh, so Kaladin's not gonna unalive himself. He's gonna take this, go back and put it in like the water system or something and kill just the people because he's gonna like save all the slaves. And he just like crushed it and like tossed it off. And I was like, this is so it felt pointless to me.
Oh, well, because I thought of it as more of like it's literally supposed to be a reminder of kindness, of that's what's truly important to Callan is like taking care of people, not hurting. That was because he'd been pushed so low. And it was just this little Windspren's love of him that made him remember that even though he hadn't succeeded in the past, he had to push forward and try more for the more people that needed him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as like the people that I have spoken to, it has most of the time when you're making that choice to either unalive yourself or like just take that step back, it is usually because you're thinking of the pain it would cause other people or the benefit you can still bring to other people, because at that point there is no value to your own life. So the only way to step out of that is to literally step out of yourself and find a grasping somewhere else. So I'm glad that we were able to talk about this, because I definitely left that chapter feeling like, what was this chapter even for? And this, Kaladin to show his love, his change, but definitely could have been handled a little better.
Yeah.
So that was section 1. But that is hilarious. No wonder you were so upset about the ending of this part, because what the viewers don't know is that we spoke yesterday because we were setting up some things, and my sister was so passionate that we had to do this recording as soon as possible because she had to keep reading, and I was like, yeah, like it's a really good part. Like I also want to keep reading, but I'm not like quite that passionate because I've read the next 3 sections already.
Okay.
But I too like
it makes more sense now.
Yeah, the end of Kaladin's chapter is very much like a what? are we doing now? So,
It's a big turning point.
yeah.
So
I do want to do a little thing at the end. So this channel is called 3 Point Analysis because we talk about books, we talk about movies, and we talk about TV shows. But I do think it would be nice to have a little, 3 points at the end. What is something that you didn't like? What is something you did like? And what is something that surprised you?
mm, okay. Let's see here. Well, I when we mentioned it before, was really bothered by the first chapter, just how little information you were given.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it it just discombobulated me, I suppose, and then made me question the rest of it. But I think that was also the intention. So that was one thing that bothered me. Let's see here. I really liked. We didn't talk about it before, but so Shalon's the blinking. How
Oh my
it's
goodness!
like
Yes,
it.
let's talk about it.
Yeah, because it's like it makes me feel like it's maybe a power of sorts. Because she has the intention of blinking, and then she can just absorb an entire picture and then put it down to exactness on a page.
Mm-hmm.
And she hasn't had any formal training at all. Um,
I can tell you, as someone with aphantasia that literally can't picture things I've already seen, that's a freaking superpower, and I was unbelievably upset the minute she did that. So jealous.
yeah, yeah. So there's that, and then okay, so what was that I disliked? Something I liked. What was and something that surprised me?
Yeah.
This almost like leads into the next thing. So when I was rereading it, I for whatever reason had convinced myself that what made Yasna want to work with Shalon was her photos. I thought that she saw it and was like, this is it. But it wasn't. It was more her tenacity and her knowledge, but mostly her tenacity that got her in. And so that was really I was really taken aback. I for whatever reason remembered her like Yasna coming in and seeing a picture of herself and being like, wow, this is crazy. But Yasna doesn't care about the arts. Um, and that's what she's strongest in, Shalon. So it's really going to be interesting to see what Yasna finds to be proud of her apprentice in.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I feel like that is the perfect thing for them because it definitely showed in the scene where she turns to Shalon and is like, what is this calculation? And Shalon instantly turns to the king and is like, what's the answer? Like, I know you know it. And the girl's like, good job. Like, don't put in the extra work when you don't have to. And so when she does like see the pictures and eventually needs it, like what's she gonna do? Instantly turn to Shalon, who has all of this experience and all of this benefit that she could have without doing any of the work, which will make her irreplaceable because Shalon is a master at the one thing that Yasna has no interest in doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a nice balance.
So I would say the thing that I did not like, um, I don't like the lack of description. And it is very much because I'm coming from Wheel of Time, which has paragraphs of description between people talking. They describe every person's outfit in every room anytime anyone walks in it. And so the fact that like he does do it's a thunderclast and it's a rock. And then he keeps talking. He's like, but it's not a rock. It is a like 3-story tall creature of mass destruction, and I'm thinking it's just like some rock dude. Like, and then like we are in different areas. Kaladin's in a different place than the prologue was in. Shalon's in a different place. She goes from a boat to a city. I have no idea what any of it looks like because he mentions it once and then doesn't really mention it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very happy that they had the map that
Yeah.
was illustrated because I was going back to be like, where are we?
That I would say is the thing that I like is that we both bought the mass market paperbacks. We bought the cheapest bad boys you could find, and yet they still have all the pictures. Like the pictures are super helpful. They're in every couple of sections. I was scrolling through it a little earlier this week, and there's an actual like what looks like a hand drawn photo of the entrance of a city. Like that's what I need. I'm so excited to get to that chapter because I'll know what the city looks like. I just wish we had them for all of them. Which once I'm done with the
Mhm.
book, I'll do my best to research at least what the towns look like without spoiling. But it's really hard to Google anything without spoiling, so I'm trying to do that. But that's what I really liked. And then the thing that really surprised me was how long we sit with characters that aren't doing anything, and yet I don't feel any drag in the pacing.
Mhm.
Like, we have scenes where Kaladin is literally just sitting there sad thinking, and it still feels action packed, which I love.
Yeah, it all seems like it's serving a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I also thought it was really, I mean, it was really cool that you mentioned that it's not necessarily going off of a timeline. It's like it's people and their emotions and how they're feeling in those situations. That's what he really holds on to is or explains in the story is like how people are feeling
Yeah.
through it, which is a lot of the time when I'm thinking about my memories, that's kind of it too. I'm like, oh, these years I was feeling anxious or
Mm-hmm.
really happy. It's you do hold on to the emotions more so than like on the Saturday of the 15th.
That's what I was saying. This
I
feels like it was written by the people living it. It doesn't feel like it was written by a historian, which some fantasy books definitely can feel like that.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like Kaladin at 50 is like, bro, listen to this. And it's like telling us a story.
Yeah.
All right, so we did all the way up to chapter 11 in this one, which it will be a part of like the thumbnail or title, so everyone will know before they come in. But next time we are going to get up to chapter 29. So this is actually a chapter. This is why I saw it. It has the picture of the city. So we get to stop right before we get to see possibly, I'm not going to say that because I don't know how to pronounce it yet. Yep, the City of Bells.
Before we get there.
Arrogance, but it's spelled error. Gens. Can you see that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can.
that's cool. All right, so that's what we'll come back to. Please, if you guys want to, comment down below anything you're interested in, anything we messed up, anything we missed. Try not to do spoilers past chapter 11 because that's where April is at. So, but she has read most of the books. So, if you spoil something, it's something she probably already knows. But we are looking to possibly get a Discord set up if anyone is interested. But we'll just see. These are probably going to come out every week. I don't think we can read much faster, although we very much want to just ingest these books. But we'll do our best, and I'll let everyone know. I'll put my socials down below. I'll put her socials if she wants them down below. All the info about like when we're releasing and when things are coming out will be on my Instagram and stuff like that because I'm the one mainly running all this stuff. My sister's just being an absolute sweetheart and reading these books with me because they're freaking awesome. That's all
Yes,
I've
they are.
got. So I hope everyone has a great day and, go read something.